Sugar Ray Robinson is a godly name in boxing history. A marvellous fighter who is widely regarded as the best to ever do it. Boxing's pound for pound king of the ring. A man so gifted that the great Muhammad Ali would look upon him with awe and wonder.
When they say Sugar Ray Robinson was the greatest fighter pound for pound, meaning that I imagine if he was a heavyweight fighting the same style, he'd be the greatest. I would have to admit, I would have to say yes. I have his fight films, I've watched the film. That man was beautiful. Timing, speed, reflexes, rhythm, his body, everything was beautiful. I say I'm the greatest heavyweight of all times, but pound for pound, I still say Sugar Ray Robinson was the greatest of all time.
Robinson was born into poverty in the harsh slums of Detroit. His birth name was Walker Smith Jr. and he entered into the world on May 3rd, 1920. He was the youngest of 3 children and would grow up in a single parent home when his mother and father divorced when he was 6. From this young age, Robinson would have to fight and entertain people for money. He survived by tap dancing for money, shining shoes and delivering papers. In order to secure the best odd jobs, street kids would fight each other. Many would later say that his exquisite footwork in the ring was harnessed from his street dancing performances. Soon after this, his mother moved the family to an equally rough area of New York. From here, he would continue to battle in the streets, regularly brawling with street gangs. He also began to box in police athletic boxing tournaments. He earned his name Ray Robinson one evening in Connecticut. He stood in as a late replacement for a boxer that did not show up. However, he did not have his boxing license on him, so he borrowed one from another boxer. That night, he boxed with such class that he could no longer go back to being known as Walker Smith. The name Ray Robinson was cemented. It was said his boxing was so sweet it was like sugar, and that is how the moniker began, Sugar Ray Robinson. Incredibly, even amongst the highly competitive world of amateur boxing, where the pool of fighters is that much greater, he was unbeaten in 125 fights. 69 of these wins were by knockout, and 44 were in the first round. This is according to writers Ken Jones and Chris Smith from the book Boxing Champions. However, more conservative estimates include 85-0 from Wikipedia and 89-0 from Britannica. He became a back-to-back Golden Gloves champion as a featherweight in 1939 and a lightweight in 1940. Despite his successful amateur career, Robinson had to settle for a terrible promotional contract. He signed with Kurt Horman, a brewer and influential businessman. But after an unsuccessful partnership, Robinson would have to buy out his contract for $10,000. His professional debut was at Madison Square Garden, which he won by knockout in the second round. From there, he would wipe out every top contender in the welterweight division with 40 straight victories. Despite this, he was denied the chance to fight for the title, so he stepped up to middleweight to challenge Jake LaMotta, the Bronx Bull. Sugar Ray would win this first fight with a points victory over 10 rounds. This would spark a bitter rivalry between the two fighters. LaMotta would hand him his first defeat, dropping him in the process in the rematch. Unmoved by this, Robinson won his next fight 2 weeks later. 1 week after this, he defeated LaMotta once again. So dominant was Robinson that after his loss to LaMotta, he remained unbeaten in 93 straight fights. Unlike most fighters of his era, he was fleet-footed, elusive and moved gracefully around the ring, a style Muhammad Ali would later imitate. However, the difference was that Robinson had tremendous power, could fight inside and out, and throw frightening combinations to head and body. It was said that he was a near perfect fighter, having no obvious flaws. The most complete boxer of all time. He was a masterful tactician who could adapt his style mid-fight to come back and win. In 1946, Robinson was finally given his shot at the welterweight championship, which he won against Tommy Bell. Shortly after this, he had a tragic premonition. He dreamt he killed his next opponent, Jimmy Doyle, in the ring. He tried to back out of the fight, but was convinced by priests to take it. Sadly, Robinson did kill Doyle after knocking him out with a left hook. This was a tragedy that followed him for the rest of his career.
The night before the fight with him, I dreamed in my sleep that I knocked him out and he died in the ring. And I got up that morning and I told the commission that I wasn't going to fight. And they said, why? And I told them what I had dreamed, Aldo. They said, oh, Ray, no, that's just a dream. And they called a Catholic priest and a minister. And they came and they talked to me and told me to go ahead with the fight. And just like we dreamed, Aldo, I hit him a left hook and he died right there in the ring.
Robinson was a showman outside of the ring. Everywhere he travelled, he took an entourage, much like modern day rap stars. This included a barber, a golf coach, a driver and a court jester, among other things. He was famous for fancy cars, especially his pink Cadillac. Despite having a wife, he was also a womanizer, paying for entire floors in hotels for his groupies to stay in. After winning the welterweight championship, he would again step up to middleweight to fight Jake LaMotta in 1950. This time, the middleweight title would be on the line. Going into the fight, LaMotta was still the only fighter to defeat him in 123 fights. LaMotta, who was known to have a granite chin, was savagely beaten by Robinson and stopped on his feet. This famous victory would be known as the Valentine's Day Massacre. Robinson would also pave the way for fighters to take control of their own careers by demanding such things as percentages of TV and radio profits. He also invested his money wisely in clubs, restaurants, bars, dry cleaners and other business ventures. His club in particular became a hub for celebrities to hang out and party in. In 1951, Randy Turpin would cause one of the greatest upsets in boxing history by outpointing the champion over 15 rounds. In 1951, Robinson rematched Turpin. After 8 rounds, he was behind on points and gushing blood from a severe cut. The referee told Ray he would give him one more round before he stopped the fight. In the 10th round, he came at Turpin with a terrifying onslaught of punches to stop him on his feet and regain the middleweight championship. He would also challenge Joey Maxim for the light heavyweight title. On one of the hottest nights of the year, the fight would take place and the ring temperature under the lights was over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. The temperature was so hot, the referee had to be changed after 10 rounds due to exhaustion. Ahead on points after 13 rounds, Robinson would collapse into his corner stool with heat exhaustion. He could not make it to his feet for the 14th round, and so, despite being way in front on the scorecards, lost the fight. He would retire shortly after, but after 3 years out of the ring with his businesses failing and a failed career as a singer and dancer, he was in serious financial trouble. And so, Robinson would make his comeback with mixed success. However, he did manage to regain the middleweight title, He would then lose and regain the title again against Gene Fullmer. Carmen Basilio would then take the title off him by split decision in a grueling contest. In the rematch, Robinson fought a hard-earned points victory to regain the title once more. At over 40 years old, his final fights were a sad sight. The once sublime skills were eroded and he failed to regain another title. He came close to winning the world title for a 6th time when he drew against Gene Fullmer. However, this was his final shot at glory, and his career would take a nosedive until he once again retired. Sadly, Robinson, despite fighting 201 times and owning multiple businesses in his career, would lose all of his money. For the remainder of his life, he survived by making guest appearances and living off handouts. For example, Frank Sinatra would give Robinson a monthly check from his own earnings. Sadly, years of punches to the head took its toll on his later life. He was diagnosed with being prematurely senile. He became paranoid and forgetful as his mind withered away. In the end, all the memories of his glittering career faded away from his mind until he died in April 1989. A sad end for boxing's greatest ever fighter. In total, Robinson would fight 201 fights as a professional. He was undefeated as a welterweight and won the middleweight championship 5 times in an era where there was only one world championship belt. He only lost 19 times, 12 of these coming after the age of 40 when he was well past his best. He accumulated 109 knockouts and was never knocked out himself. A marvellous record that will never be repeated in the pro game.
And one of the all-time greats, Sugar Ray Robinson, the original Sugar Ray, died of Alzheimer's disease and diabetes this morning in California. He was 67 years old. He fought for a quarter of a century, winning the welterweight title and the middleweight crown 5 different times. He had 200 fights, losing just 19. Everybody agreed that pound for pound, he was the best fighter of all time.